Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is my Yakuza 5, Part 4, Chapter 2 walkthrough. I don't know why I said it that way, kind of weird. That's not even the right title, that's the chapter and the part. This is Confronting the Past. This is EX hard difficulty, or extra hard, depending on how you pronounce that. And we begin playing as, is it Shinada? I think this character's called. It's been a while, guys, you'll have to bear with me. And as you can hear from the video, this is another one of the victims of optical cables and PlayStation 3 capturing, so there's no audio on this. So instead of splicing in a bunch of different audio to fit what was happening, I decided to go with one of the songs I really liked and just have that playing in the background, because the splicing of the audio it wasn't doing it for me. It didn't capture what I wanted to capture with it, and some people felt that it was a little bit jarring. So instead, we're going to go with some smooth jazz. I'm going to lightly play it in the background, and it's just going to be me and my voice and the gameplay for you. So this is the final character of Yakuza 5. I think he's pretty fun, and I think mission-wise, he has one of the more interesting sequences of the game. He's a former professional fighting game player, former professional baseball player, and unfortunately, he was forced to retire thanks to a bit of a scandal, and the story here is going to be explaining that backstory. But for money, he is a journalist who seems to specialise in kind of doing like hostess clubs and the more saucy, racy material, because he's popular with all the ladies in the town. He's quite the ladies' man and all kind of that. He's also a pretty gifted fighter, and his fighting style is vastly different to the people we've played as. He's probably closest to Tiger Saijima, because he does this kind of rugby or American football techniques that are mixed in with specialising in weapons. So he has this whole emphasis on doing tackles to people that can then convert into running attacks and convert into grappling moves, and then if you ever pick up a weapon, he has unique animations with weapons that make him the most weapon-focused character in the game. So he's kind of a mixture of every element of the game put in one, and it makes him very powerful. It must be said, guys, I'm a very old-fashioned Yakuza player, even though I'm quite new to the series, in spite of playing nearly every game that you can get, even the imported ones. I prefer playing as Kazuma Kiryu. I always will, because that's the combat style I really enjoy. I love the countering of the tiger drops. I love the combos and the bounding and the ability to mix them up and do all the grabs and the heat actions and everything. I like playing as Kazuma, even though his suit doesn't fit and he looks like he's walking around in a bulky sleeping gown. Like, he's my guy. He's the one I enjoy the most. So when it comes to playing as Shinada, I enjoy this guy's side quest stuff more than I do the combat, because there's certain areas of the game I enjoy to do, which is, for instance, the countering, the more defensive playstyles. He's not the strongest at, so you have to do a lot of different methods of encountering enemies, which is just not as enjoyable for me. But you might love it, I think there's a lot to this character, there's a lot of potential, and I particularly really like the baseball minigame, even though at first I found it quite confusing. Once you get better at the game, your character improves and the baseball does get easier, and then it becomes a lot of fun in the batting area, doing all the side missions. But at the moment, this is Yakuza's standard fare. I'm trimming out all the cutscenes, so you're missing out on all the real reason most people play these games, and it just looks like a sequences of following the pink dots, which is exactly what it is. We're trying to track down a dude who's apparently notorious for looking for, I think, ugly girls in hostess clubs. So when you talk to this manager here, he's going to give you the choice of 2 different bars, and you have to go for the one that I think is the lower class one, and he goes there and he ends up getting kicked out because he's kind of a freak. You're going to see me checking my phone for those messages quite a lot as well. This game, I don't know why, but it's a problem, and it probably should have been patched, but it probably never will be. When you've done all the side quests and all the side missions and stuff for a character, every time you play as them, when you turn the console off, you get text messages on your phone telling you that you've done them all, and they show up on the screen as that envelope blinking, and it's really annoying. It's a HUD element that shouldn't be there, so when you're playing, it's always there unless you go and check them off, and every time you check them off, they return somehow. It's really bizarre. Not a fan of it myself, especially when you can't fight them on, even if you did everything in the previous run through, you've got to do them all again, which is trash if you ask me. Because I did every side quest, but I did them out of sequence. I did every single side mission in the game, except for Haruka's. And then on my next playthrough I did all of Haruka, so technically I did every single thing in the game, but because I did it across 2 playthroughs, I fucked myself, so I have to do all the other ones I've already done. and unfortunately some of them are really boring and stupid. All I want to do is fight the hardest boss in the game, and they make it so difficult to do it. And I understand it's kind of like an Easter egg, a little bit like, finding a super secret weapon on Final Fantasy and then getting really strong to be able to survive its attacks. But when it comes to running around the street, Grand Theft Auto style, and talking to dudes and doing stuff that's not fighting, I've got very little patience for it, even though I do enjoy the writing and I do enjoy the goofiness of it. I'm just not the biggest fan of having to do 100 separate things to unlock a fight that's not even that great, to be honest. Because let's face it, guys, as fun as Amon is, or Amon I think he's called, it's just a dude who recovers really fast, has super fast, high damaging combos, and is incredibly dangerous because he gets like bullshit moves with weapons nobody else uses in the game. That's the only reason it's remotely interesting, because it's a foe that's incredibly dangerous, and he's been in this series since the beginning. And he's the Easter egg boss at the end for the players who really like Yakuza. And I'm in that box of, I really like Yakuza, but I'm not the biggest fan of doing all the tertiary bullshit. I'd rather just be able to go in the Coliseum and fight him, or, pick a fight with him after you beat the game and boom. But I understand why they do it. It's to incentivize doing everything in the game and discovering everything, because they put a lot of love and effort into Yakuza, and they want you to see it. They don't want you to skip it all and just get to the meat. They want you to partake in the vegetables as well. And Game Design 101, guys, if you have something you want a gamer to see, make it so that they have to see it to do something cool, and chances are people will do that. But at the moment, we're currently running around with this Loan Shark guy, who actually has an interesting character progression, which, once again, Yakuza's so good when it comes to the characters. Even if you don't like the storylines and you think they're overly dramatic and dumb, the characters have progression, they have a range. They go through several instances where their personality is forced to change and forced to adapt to things that have happened. And it doesn't have to be the most massive thing. Nobody loses like legs and shit and becomes quadriplegic or anything. But it's human shit that happens to them, and they have to steel themselves on the other side of it or be weaker due to it. And it's interesting watching the characters struggle in that way, and sometimes it's more subtle than you'd think. It's not all everybody taking the shirts off on top of buildings and shouting and clashing heads, which, those are my favourite bits, don't get me wrong. Speaking of, this looks like this is going to be a combat sequence. Oh no, we're going to the restaurant to talk to the chef. So the plot in this chapter, and of course it's very quick when you trim the 50-minute cutscenes out, there's kind of this Illuminati coalition of people, these puppet masters, the shadow government that are running the city in the place of this mobster, and I think they're using his name to strike fear into rival clans. But because nobody knows who this person is or where he is or anything, he's kind of got this shadow reputation of being everywhere, and obviously, like most things, it gets blown out of proportion and it gets everybody fearing this entity that doesn't necessarily exist. And the story here is going to be showing you that. Wow, the frame rate dies on that part, doesn't it? Wow, here we go. Chase sequence. So the chase sequences in Yakuza 5, not only in 7 frames a second, which is dramatic and awful on the eye, they're also not as fun as they were in, I think, is it 4? In 4, I think they nailed it. They made it perfect for me, because there was skill, and it was tricky, but it wasn't, too much bullshit. Even though on extra hard, they were fucking stupid hard, and I didn't like them much there. I could be wrong here, guys, it might have been 3. The problem I have with Yakuza when it comes to my memory of them is I played Yakuza 2, Yakuza 5, Yakuza 3, and Yakuza 4 in the space of about a month and a half. I played a lot of Yakuza in a short amount of time, so the subtle changes between each title and improvements and regressions and things kind of all mixed together. I do realise certain ones that quite strongly stick out to me. Like I remember in Yakuza 3, the Tiger Drop does not give you the same immunity, so unless you do perfectly spaced Tiger Drops, you trade and take damage, and that made that game way harder because that move is incredibly powerful, but on that game it has to be perfect. And I know there's a lot of people that would like that to be the case in all of the games, because some people don't like the Tiger Drop spamming that a lot of people do. I got a comment from a guy that was wishing I wouldn't use it so much, and I tried to explain to him that I kind of love it, and it's one of my favourite ways to play, so sorry dude. But there we go, we caught him finally, the frame rate recovered, and we get to question him. But a couple of the features I remember just stuff that made the games work better that wasn't present in later games. There's so many features in those first two, in Yakuza 3 and 4, that didn't make it into 5, and make 5 a worse game because of it, and I don't really get that. And at the moment, it's been a little bit too long for me to remember what exactly they were, but I'm certain I've probably spoken about them in this commentary. I love these animations too. Like, I think that's the thing I love the most about Yakuza, is the fact that it's essentially a game where you fill a bar to beat people with fancy animations. It's just like Azura's Wrath, only it's way better because it's got so many different ways of doing it. Like, think of all the heat actions in this game. There's over 100 of them. 100 different animations to damage enemies. That's pretty cool. And then when you combine it with combat that has never been the most precise and it's a little bit wonky, but there's still a lot of potential there and a lot of fun to be had. There's mixing up between light and heavy attacks, there's dodge attacks, there's counter attacks, there's grab moves, there's crowd controllers, there's weapons, there's, you know, modifiers on environments and things. They've really built towards having a really fun, old school Japanese-esque brawler type combat in one of these sandbox games, and I think it's a wonderful thing. Additionally, you can block a lot of weapons that you wouldn't normally be able to block when you're using a weapon, so sometimes carrying weapons is a really good idea. If you want to do things like no damage, the best way to do it is to bring something that can block everything. If you do that, there'll be no attacks that you can't get behind or you can't work through, and for everything else there's always Tiger Drop, which I absolutely adore. But thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm sorry that I don't have audio, guys. It frustrates me as much as you. It makes me even want to commentate these videos. It pisses me off so much, but what can you do? You take care now.